I think. Hello, can you hear me now? Hello, 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 hello. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Volume's up.
It's supposed to be green.
It is working? Okay, cool. Oh. Hi, pizza's over there on the left. Yep. This is the Docker meetup.
So it stopped at some point. Like the YouTube video paused for me automatically. And then there was a gap and then I couldn't hear you.
Oh, okay. Well, I actually stopped sharing so that I could make sure that the audio controls were set up correctly, that I was actually getting the right audio, because it was too difficult when it was going to infinity to actually see what I was doing. Anybody here, this is your very first TIG? 2? Okay. Oh, 3? Okay. So we'll just go over just a few little rules and background stuff, and then we'll dive in. Did anybody have any problem finding the book? Everybody.
Trouble finding the author, though.
Finding him? Oh, meaning the author wasn't posted on the meetup? Is that what you're saying? Or wasn't posted on the site? Or
No. He didn't answer Twitter,
oh,
contact me.
gotcha. Oh, okay.
I promised him a really good review if he'd only answer a couple questions.
Oh, restrooms are, you can go either way, but they're by the elevators.
By the elevators. All right.
Okay.
I know. Which obviously self-published, huh?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, he doesn't have a publishing company. That's what we decided as well.
Also didn't have an editor.
Yeah, that is so true. Yeah, Ike loves books like this. You know, like one author, kind of freelance style, just sort of, you know, non-technical, I guess, or you know, yeah. No, he knows his stuff. He knows technically. I'm saying the writing style is non-technical. Yeah. Anyway. I prefer a more, I don't know, a referencey type book, you know, a book that you can use more.
An index in that book.
Yeah, exactly. That bothers me a little bit, and the lack of editing and the informal prose and the abstract nature of his speaking.
I'm okay with the goofiness. I mean,
Yeah.
almost fun.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
what I was looking for is examples for Windows with every example. You give them one time, the next time you wouldn't.
Right. Yeah. I think what probably happened is this book started out as just a Linux book. And then when Docker for Windows was finally published, he went ahead and tried to update, you know, stuff with Windows, but he didn't update everything, right? Clearly. So 606, I don't know. I still feel like we got, do you want to head down? Have you checked down at the lobby yet?
No, not yet.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the app, the site. Sometimes they post their technical answers.
Okay, yeah. So if you head on down, and then we'll wait for you to get back before we get started. So 1 more minute, maybe. So
How long have you guys been here?
Since October of last year, so not quite a year. We were, if you remember, up in Carlsbad, yeah. But Brad stepped down as a partner. He was the one in Carlsbad, and Ike was commuting, about 45 minutes to an hour every day. So we decided to move it closer to him. I'm in the middle of the county, so for me, it's 20 minutes either way, so it doesn't bother me. But it's really getting around Sorrento Valley. That's the real traffic concern. If you have to go through Sorrento Valley to get from where you are to where you're trying to go, that's the big issue. I wonder actually if I have a.
How's the book versus the Kindle?
From my perspective, I always try to get referencey type books in print because I find myself flipping back and forth or earmarking or whatever, like making notes. And although some of that stuff is possible with Kindle, it's more cumbersome, right? And I'm the exact opposite for fiction. If at all possible, I want it on my Kindle. I do not want an actual book. But hello. I haven't actually used the Kindle version of the book. I think Ike has it, so you could probably ask him next month because he'll be here.
I have it on Kindle.
Yeah.
I'm trying it because I'm like you normally, but I was like, I want to try and see if I can utilize it. And it's been the thing I like is like all the highlights I make. You can like look at the book, so it'll list them all up, and you can kind of send them and share them. But other than that, it is hard to like. It just doesn't flip back and forth like a normal book. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's just me because that's how I kind of grew up on and learned everything. But I don't know if people are like 20 years old now and they didn't maybe they had Kindles the whole time and were getting into stuff. It's different for them. So I would wonder about that.
Well, unfortunately for me, I would fall more to the older rather than the younger category there.
Are there different readers for new rule?
Well, on Kindle, you can use your computer, as well as the Kindle. And my wife has one of the Paperwhites, which are one of the nicer Kindles. And I have a crap Kindle, like the basic, whatever they are, $70 ones now.
Yeah, I have it. It's just, you'd think they'd come in like bigger sizes with this is the Kindle, but
yeah, they do. I mean, they come a little bit bigger than that. The Paperwhite ones are bigger a little bit. Yeah.
I feel like there's a ton of features to the Kindle software that I just don't even know or use. Like you can maneuver much better than I know how to. So
yeah,
it's like a learning experience at this point.
Yeah. Everybody good? Nobody waiting down there?
No.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, welcome everybody. For those of you who it's your first time at a TIG, this is a group that was started, oh my God, a long time ago. Let's see if I can find maybe.
an office far away.
Yes, in an office far away. Exactly. Let's try like this one. I don't know. Let's say January of 2014 or maybe even earlier. I don't know. And it was originally like a beginner group shoot off of the .NET user group. Our first topic way back when was C#. And we wanted a place where, it was more of like a discussion format rather than a typical user group at that time, which was where a speaker got up and diatribed or presented for some number of hours. And, people that had questions, when you're interrupting a presentation, that's being delivered to 50 people and asking beginner questions, the speaker gets frustrated, other people get frustrated. So We wanted something that was a little bit more friendly for question and answer type format, a little bit more of a discussion format. And so Ike and Brad and myself started this group, the beginner group, the TIG group. And there are a couple of kind of rules. We want to make sure that it's safe for discussion. So please, no derogatory comments, don't cut anyone off, that sort of thing. Just be polite and be respectful for the other people who may not have the same background that you do. I think that's really it. For the architecture's sake, we have some more rules, but I think that's basically it. So the book that we chose, and another thing about how we choose the books. So we started off again using C#. It was like beginner C# or head first C# was our first book. And we started doing database topics, and then we got into mobile and JavaScript and the web, and we did some Python in there. And last month was R, and those of you who attend the very last R meetup, the way we normally choose the next topic is we brainstorm on topic ideas at the last meeting. And then everybody that's attending either in person or online gets to vote. And so last time we had a bit of a tie. Which topic we wanted to cover next. We had Docker Kubernetes, but we also had Apache Spark. And we decided that it would be good if we could cover Docker first, because one of the primary ways you run Spark is in a Docker container. So that would be very helpful, having that background knowledge before we start diving into Spark, because the other ways you have to pay for it, right? So anyway, so that's why we chose Docker, and we scrambled a little bit on the book. There isn't, we did a little bit of research, and we were going back and forth on it. There's not a book that covers both Linux and Windows, does it to some depth, and yet is a smaller book that's easy to fit in 3 meetings, right? That's a kind of a tough set of qualifications. So we said on this book, because of its kind of goofy writing style, it's pretty easy to read. You can it's almost like skimming, I found. I found in the R book last month, I was reading about a page an hour. And in this book, I'm reading about, 60 pages an hour or so, like it's much easier going. It's less dense. Because of that, we went ahead and we assigned you like the first 150 pages to read for tonight. If you were unable to do that, I don't think it'll be a problem. We'll go through most of the material tonight. But that was sort of prerequisite homework or whatever that we were supposed to do for tonight. All right, so first, those of you who did read the book, let's talk a little bit about general impressions of the book, the author, etc. That was kind of what we were doing before we started, but how many people enjoyed the writing style? About half. Yeah, that's what we sort of expected. Half enjoyed it, half hated it. Yeah, let me ask the corresponding question. How many people disliked the writing style? Oh, okay. I would put myself in that category. Okay, 2. Okay, so more enjoyed it than disliked it. That's good. That's what we're hoping for. And in terms of the material, did you find it too light, just right, or too heavy? How many people too light? Yeah, I expected that as well. Just right. Okay. Heavy? Too heavy? Okay. So yeah, okay. Enjoyed the writing style, but it was a little light on the material maybe. Yeah. It could have used some more examples for Windows. And it could have used, when he started talking about at the end the build stuff, I think he could have used a few more examples there to sort of demonstrate what he was the various ways that can be used, I guess. Okay, so the beginning part, right, really through the first 49, page 49, is just installing it and getting set up and talking about what it is in general. Were there any questions on that material? I wasn't really going to cover it. I think the way I think of it, and there was a good picture. It's one of the things I did like about the book. I don't know where that picture was. Let me see if I marked it. Yeah.
Talked about Hyper-V requirements.
Yeah. Oh, say that again?
Could have talked about Hyper-V requirements.
Like which ones are supported and which ones are not,
You
or
have to turn off Hyper-V.
yeah.
Other things I need to have it on.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, it's an absolute pain in the butt. So for me, we're doing a project in Xamarin right now, which requires Hyper-V. And then for TIG, we're required not to have Hyper-V. So it's a constant reboot. And in fact, I was working on them both today. So I've rebooted my computer like 4 or 5 times today. Oh yeah, here is the picture. I know I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but I think it's a similar picture to the one I use when I'm talking about these concepts. 110 and 111 are the pages in the picture book. I'm not sure. Hopefully they'll correspond similarly into the Kindle format. But basically, that's the big idea of Docker. It's rather than having a full-on OS, right? You have you're reusing the operating system. I think he even talked about, and I really like the way he worded it. He talked about it being virtualization at the operating system layer rather than virtualization at the machine layer, right? That's another great way of thinking about it. So everybody was able to get up and running okay, Hyper-V aside, yeah? How many people are actually running it on Linux? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the rest Windows. And those of you who are running it on Windows, how many people are running it on Windows for Linux and on Windows for Windows? Okay, yeah.
It's one thing that I noticed that I have Windows. That's the configuration when I turn the Windows features on screwed up my network. Anybody else have problems with it could be this computer? Like, totally return it.
Do you also have, are you running the Windows itself inside of a VM or something like that? Oh, no.
But I have some other security settings and turned off IP6 and stuff like that.
Interesting. So it somehow whooped those. No, I haven't seen that actually. I will say we considered Docker. We considered doing Docker once before in TIG. It was like it was right before the Linux track. I don't remember when that was. I can find out actually, but it was like over a year ago, I think. Yeah. September 28th. Okay, so sometime in September of 2016. Anyway, we considered it before that track, and at that time, Docker for Windows was out. It was still in pre-release or beta or whatever, and it was not ready for prime time. Let's just say that. We did some experiments. We tried to set some things up. They were crashing. Docker wouldn't stay running. There was all kinds of issues, but they really have gotten their their bugs down, and I think it's a pretty good experience now. And I like the fact that you can flip back and forth between Windows and Linux. It'll be great when you can do that without actually going to, I don't know if you guys have done this, but so that, I don't know if you can see, let me start one quick thing. Nope, not talks, tools, sysinternals, zoom it. Okay, let's see. So now if I go, yeah, okay. So down at the bottom, that's how you switch back and forth these days. It's like the 6th one down. Let's see if I can, hold on, let me close that. Okay. So yeah, let's see, it's at the bottom of my screen now. So switch to Windows containers. So right now I'm set up to run Linux. That's what I'll be doing the demos in tonight, but you can use Windows containers. The only issue about using Windows containers, and he mentions this, I think, is that they tend to be larger images. So one of the huge benefits of using Docker and the OS virtualization rather than the hardware virtualization is now these things are smaller and lighter, and you can pass them around and share them more easily and pull them back and forth over the network more easily. But when you start getting into some of those larger Windows containers, it's very similar to a VM in that it's a gigantic thing that you don't really want to start passing around. When you get up above 2 gigs, it becomes painful again. Okay, so I feel like I'm diatribing. Questions? Yeah.
Unrelated question.
Okay. I'm sorry, say that again.
Is it retract?
No. The Linux track, this is tied for the smallest length that we've done. Most of them are closer to 6 tracks. It really depends on the material that we're covering, and I think the largest one we did was Python, and that was probably 8 because we also did machine learning. So we did like Python, the language, and we did 3 times of that. And then we did Python for web, and we did 2 or 3 times for that. And then we did Python machine learning. We did 2 or 3 times for that. So it was around 8 total. Yeah, it depends on the topic. I'm not sure. We haven't really dived in yet to Spark, which will be the one that we're covering next. And I don't know how big that'll be yet. Hopefully we'll have a better idea at the end of the Kubernetes talk about how big that'll be.
So I was a little surprised that I didn't know anything about storage drivers. I was talking about it on 44, 45, like direct LVM and
Well,
auto extending the thin pool. And
yeah, I think that's primarily because these days you don't have to, right? It depends on when you got into Docker. If you got into Docker early on Linux, there were some performance issues with some of the drivers, and so that was a pretty widely publicized thing that you had to deal with. These days, the defaults are good, and they finally nailed those things down. So that's probably why.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I don't even know if I wanted to optimize it.
What you would do to optimize it? Actually, you know what? I feel like he talked, or he talks. Maybe it's even after the stuff we were reading about some of those things. I don't know. Does anybody remember? Yeah, volumes and persistent data. Maybe chapter 13. And I feel like he definitely later on starts talking about more, namespaces and groups and the stuff that Docker is actually based upon. So I think it'll come back around when we get to that section. Yeah. Cool. All right, so the chapters that I really enjoyed, I mean, I felt like he did a great job in chapter 4, the big picture, where he kind of gave a whirlwind tour of Docker and what it's about. And he classified the 2 use cases of Docker being from the ops perspective, people that are really concerned. They didn't develop the application, but they need to make sure that it's deployed correctly and that it stays running and that sort of thing, versus the developer perspective, where they want to develop the application and let somebody else figure out how to deploy and monitor it. You know, for the most part, obviously there's a little bit of a overlap there, and thus DevOps. That's where that comes into play. But so from the ops perspective, let's just run through that one real quick. First, yeah, and a very helpful command is Docker version. And I also like how that, that command shows you, although it's a little bit confusing, I guess, you know, both what your client is in other words, the machine that you're on, really, and what your server is running. And so here I'm on Windows, but I'm using Linux. That's another way to sort of check that out at a glance. Docker image ls is how you go or Dicker, you know. Yeah. You can see that on here I have quite a few images, and some of these you can look at the size. That's pretty telling. Look, here's one. Here's one that's 5.4 gigs. And here's one that's 4.15 megs. Yeah, so that there's just showing you the vast difference in sizes between, you know, I'm not sure actually if PySpark, which is what we're going to be covering when we get to Spark, if that one is for Windows or Linux, or as you saw later on, it could be for both, right? You can declare in the manifest that this is the image I want to use when Windows people try and pull down the image, and this is the image I want to use when Linux people pull down the image. But he did talk about the repositories and tags and image IDs and so forth. And so to get one of these things, you're going to do a Docker pull. I had done that recently, so that was, you know, it said I'm already up to date. But see this one here? That is Ubuntu None 7 weeks ago, and it's 81 megs and not 82.4 megs. That was at one time Ubuntu latest, right? But then it obviously, the latest kept rolling forward, and when I pulled again more recently, I got a completely different image down, but it left that one on my machine with no tags now. So then once you've pulled an image, you can go ahead and run a container. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
So you had an image that was tagged latest
Mm-hmm.
locally already, and you ran Docker pull Ubuntu latest again, and it replaced it.
Yes. In fact, it's stranger than that. And this is, he talks about this later on. I think we'll cover it. But so I said Docker 7 weeks ago, I said Docker pull Ubuntu latest, and I got the image ID of 113, etc. Right? Then I pulled Docker pull latest 8 days ago, right? And I got 7.4F8, right? It's now, this is now the latest, and it knows it now. So this one's still on my machine, and it's none. And then now when I just pulled Ubuntu latest, it says, oh, that SHA, that hash is the same as the one that you already have. So there was nothing for me to do. No network necessary. No download necessary. Right? Does that make sense?
And I think we've run into problems when we have an image tagged latest locally, run latest, thinking it's going to go to the remote repository and get whatever's the latest, but it says, oh, you have something that's called latest. Where do you go?
Unless you pull, right, you're just using your tagged images of latest.
So if you build from,
If you build from, I think that would that would pull, right?
If you do Docker run.
That's a good question, actually. I wonder if we can.
your Docker file says from Ubuntu latest, do you get the one on the machine that it finds locally, or do you get the new one? I think
That's a very good question.
It gets whatever's local.
That's what.
Yeah, we can. We'll get that in a minute. Actually, we'll get that into when we get into chapter whatever it is, 6 or whatever. Yeah, we'll get to it. But keep that question alive. That's a very good question. Okay, so where are we? Oh yeah, so we're gonna run. So yeah, once you've got an image, you want to run a container. And I do like, for the most part, all of the commands that you deal with related to images are Docker image, do something, and all of the commands that you and he describes it in the book like classes and instances, or VM images and actual VM instances, right? Same sort of thing. So I do like that the commands are prefaced with image or container, depending on whether you're talking about the build time or the runtime or the images or the instances or the classes or instances. And so here what we're saying is Docker container run. We're specifying what to run via the repository and tag combination. And then we're specifying to use the interactive terminal mode and the command that we want to run as bin bash. Okay, and then there we are. He does a PS to find out what's running. And here we see, unlike on Windows where there would be, a crap ton of things running, here we see just bash and the PS command that we ran. And then, excuse me, and then we could control PQ. Yeah, okay. We could do a Docker container ls and see nervous pain is still running. We can do container exec it, and then this guy, and then bash, bin bash. Sorry, wait, yeah, bin bash. And now we're back in it, right?
started the new bash.
With a new bash, yes. PS, okay, yeah. Yeah, so there's our old, wait, which one was which? PID1. There's our old bash. Here's our new bash, right? Our new bash is 11, and the old bash is 1. Yeah. Good. And then
Can you reconnect to the bash?
that's a good question. I wonder if you go, sorry, here. I wonder if you go like IT with no bin bash. No. How would you get access to the running instance? Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how you do that. What was the question? So the original question was, is there a way to get back into the original bash that you have? Okay. So exec was the one that we were using. And that basically starts a new process, right? Okay, so let's try that. Docker attach, is it container attach? Just Docker attach. And then nervous pain. Okay, and then which one are we using? Now we're using one. Okay, cool. Well done. Yeah, if you want to attach the other, I wonder if you can do, hold on. Let's see, PQ. I wonder if we can do Docker attach. Is there a help or a -- help?
Before you start with run, then you can go out, and then you can go back with this command.
Yeah, but that is starting a new one. That's what we're saying. So that's what I did, right? I did. If you look here on the screen, right, I did Docker container exec it bin bash, and it started a new instance of bash. So to get back to the old instance of bash, we can do, or the original instance of bash, I should say.
You know, it was always together with, you know, with the very first OP thing. You start a container, you run ps command, and then you interrupt it, and then you go back. It was all there.
Yeah. Well, attach is how we can get back to the original one.
It wasn't attached.
It wasn't attached? Okay.
He doesn't mention attach in the book at all.
Well, if we only had an index, we could tell.
Well, there you go. That's exactly.
But it's very difficult without that.
It
You have
states
to
here,
reread the whole book.
Yeah.
it states here that the attach command will display the output of the entry point of the command. It started the container.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
always.
Yeah. Always the original. Yeah. Oh, well, hold on. Can't you, once you're in, you could just switch, right? Yeah. Yeah. So once you're in, I think that's probably it. You just attach the original one and then switch over to the one you want. Yeah. Okay, cool. That was good stuff. Let's see. So we attached, and then the shutdown sequence, right? So Docker container stop, and then we had nervous pain. And he did go into a little bit about why you don't necessarily want to do just remove, even though it would work. It's not really a good idea because it doesn't give your processes a chance to clean up after themselves or whatever. So to stop gracefully. Yeah. Okay.
Just try exec, okay? When you start it, you don't know the name of the container, so you cannot use it started. It's command.
Hold on. So you're saying I should do a run and then an exec?
Do you have a container run?
Nope, I killed it. So let me run one more. Okay, now I've got one running. And now you want me to get out of it. Okay, I'm out of it. And now,
Now you look how it is made.
oh, yep. Docker container ls. Okay. Reverend Shockley. All right.
Then you get out, it's going to
Yeah, got out.
then you get in Docker, dash E,
Right, but that's what I did before, right? And that creates a new one.
So if you don't add the bin bash, then it'll run the same entry point.
Yeah, I tried that. It basically says it must require, it requires 2 arguments, right? So if you're execing, I mean, it makes perfect sense. If you're execing, you're trying to start a new process in the container, right?
Well, at home on my Unix computer, it works like that. I don't know why that.
That's strange because it makes sense to me the way it's working right now. Exec is starting a new process, right? When you exec, you are executing.
To start the process,
Yeah. To start a process, you exec. Exactly.
It's also a start command, which seems to be what it is you say you want to do. As he was to bring it back from vacation.
Yeah, that would just start the container to begin with, wouldn't it? Yeah. I mean, we did that one too, right? Yeah. Yeah. That would be like starting it in the background mode. If you've stopped it, right, and then you start it again, you know, those are sort of like the instance is idle, not doing anything, and then the instance is running whatever process again, right? That's sort of that's different than exec, which is running a new process, and it's different from attach, which is attaching to an existing process, right?
So I think it would be a question to run an access. The run starts a container.
Yeah.
And you have to have a command to run in that. Access executes in an existing.
But
Yeah.
this command is exit. The name of container is already here. Why?
Because if you run it in an existing container.
In an existing container.
So you have to decide what container you want to run the
But
process in.
Yeah.
telling me that if that starts a new container.
No. Starts a new process. A new process within the container. Yeah. Okay, I see the confusion now. Yes, exec starts a new process within the container. We were talking about attaching to the existing process of an already running container. And apparently the way to do that is attach. Yeah. Okay. So, yep.
So what we just did, docker run -it Ubuntu latest bin bash, and then control PQ. So we now have detached from it, but it's still running.
Yes.
But if I do container run -d Ubuntu latest bin bash.
Okay.
Right,
That's
so
the
with it
background.
detached
Yeah.
background.
Yeah.
Then it doesn't. It looks like it doesn't. It maybe exits immediately or something. Then I don't see it in my list of running containers. So
You try it, it might fire up a new container.
Okay. So
So
we are.
The process that you run must keep on running. Because as soon as you start a bash, it exits
Right.
your container.
right. So that's what. But then why does
The
terminal redirect, but then control PQ keep it
What you're
running?
describing, one is running something as a daemon and you don't want to interact with it at all, and the other is where you, for instance, want to launch a shell and want to start some processes manually in the shell and then disconnect.
And so in the shell, it's waiting for your input. And in the other case,
sent it to the background.
It's like the Control-Z.
yeah.
Okay. So it's still
If
sitting
you
there
would have done
waiting.
exit, it would have stopped the container.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes
Control-Z.
Yeah. Actually, yeah. We could do that. So if I can't remember where I am right now, run. So it's running. We're running Reverend Shockley. If we attach to Reverend Shockley, okay, we're on 1, right? Then we say exit.
Stops the process.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So now the
Okay.
originating process is stopped,
Right.
and now it should be the container should also be stopped.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Do the same thing you do with Control-PS, I believe.
Yeah.
So the exit command will shut down the container.
Exactly. Okay, so that was the ops perspective. Then he talked about the dev perspective. So there he did a clone. Actually, I've already cloned, haven't I? Where did I put that? Samples, I think. What did I call it? Docker something. Docker book. Woo! And then PS web. Okay. So here is the app that he created. And the important part here is this Docker file. And in the Docker file, it starts with a from, which is the base image. And then the label just adds a bit of metadata to the image, and then all of these other commands basically, as he talks about later on, add a layer onto the image. And then these last two talk about the port to expose, and then the command to run if you don't specify a different command to run. Right? So once you've done that,
So you can overrule that if you would start a container?
yeah. So once you've done that, then we would say Docker image build, and so this is where we're going to tag the thing. Let's call this TIG PS web, and then that's fine with the latest. Oops. Oh, and then the dot. The dot is very crucial and also very difficult to see. Yeah. Okay. So now we have done TIG PS web latest. And so we can go ahead. We've basically created our own image there. And just like before, we can now do the Docker container run -d. So this is in the background, as you were talking about earlier, Greg. We can give it a name if we want. And this basically says map the port on this machine to the port in the container. And here we're just doing a straight mapping. And then lastly, the image that we want to run. And I screwed up somewhere. Oh, already in use. Let's try TIG web 1. Okay, there we go. So now that container is running in the background.
Maybe to clarify a little bit, when you say it's the port on your machine, you're doing everything on your machine, but you could have a host be another machine. So you could be running Docker. You could be using a client connect to a Docker host.
That's true.
And that the host, the IP, the host on that host, the host port going into the container.
Yes.
Located on that.
That is the, yes, that's true. The
The
port that where the physical machine where the container is running's port to the port inside of the container. Yeah. So that mapping is. Yeah.
It's kind of hidden there because you're doing everything on your own one machine.
Right. But in the situation of a real DevOps type deployment, right, you would definitely be doing this remotely. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, good clarification there. Okay, so there is my container up and running. And then I'm not sure why I wrote that down, but it doesn't matter. And then I can probably, no, I can't from there. Careful, Scott. Okay. Yeah, there was the result of hitting my own machine's 8080, which is exposing the containers 8080, right? But if I were talking to a different host, I would just put the DNS name or IP address of that host's 8080, right? Yeah.
I had a hard time with that step. It came out on a different IP address that it set up as a local. When I installed something I did when I installed Docker, I ended up with a 172, whatever, local. It made a local plan. I don't know what it did. Why.
Interesting. So, it wasn't 127.0.0.1, right? It wasn't just. No, it was an actual IP address. Yeah.
I finally found it in the Docker configuration file. Have this IP address that was the driver that it set up for Linux running under Windows. So I was running it under Windows.
Oh, it's a different configuration for running as Windows.
That's what it was. Yeah. Running Docker in a VM. So prior to Docker for Windows, like the product, the way we used to run Docker in Windows was we would just create a VM. What was it called? The Moby Linux VM or something like that, and we would run it within that VM, right? And so that was the IP address of that. Yeah, that's probably what happened. And that maybe you were mentioning earlier you had a issue with that. Okay. Which one are you trying to use? Are you trying to use guest? I don't even know the guest one. I know the real one. Yeah.
I'm connected to bandwidth now.
Yeah.
Okay. Bandwidth now works. Is that someone's phone here, or what is that? Is that a? Okay. Well,
this guy down the street. He looks like he's set up, you know.
We'll look up that old guest password. It's probably something regarding our old address, CB2808 or something like that. Yeah.
Using Mac OS for Docker. If you're doing it in Mac OS, it's spinning up a virtual machine as well.
Yeah. Interesting.
Same kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Those things we're talking about is fairly new, where it's just all completely spinning up a Windows stuff.
It existed in 2016. It didn't really work in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but that's about when it was coming out. I mean, I think it came out in like maybe June or May of that year, you know, and it was like pre-alpha type stuff.
You surprised me at the last meeting when I asked instead of known it runs completely on Windows native. Oh, I did.
Yeah. It was. It's been under development for quite a while, and we tried to do it, but it wasn't ready for prime time yet.
Docker run inside of VirtualBox? Because right now with Hyper-V on VirtualBox, so basically I reboot like 15 times a day.
Yeah.
To switch between the two.
So
Yeah.
I had trouble getting that to work. And I don't know why. Hyper-V, for instance, should work when you turn the virtualization extension on in the box. I have the BIOS.
Nested virtualization. You have to have nested virtualization. Yeah.
Is supposed to work.
I have gotten that to work before, but that, like the Windows, back in 2016, was very flaky, and there were a lot of not very well documented steps and stuff that you had to go through. But as long as your hardware supports nested virtualization and you've turned that on in the BIOS, sometimes that's necessary, then running it within a VM should be possible.
Also, I use Parallels, so you cannot switch that on a Mac. So it's
On a Mac with Parallels.
Mac running Windows, running Docker.
Yeah. Interesting.
Well, if you want to run Windows, Docker.
Well, on a Mac, you wouldn't need to run Windows, right?
You want to run Docker? Windows.
Yeah. Oh, if you want to run Docker Windows images, yeah.
So then you kind of stuck.
Yeah.
I have a Mac. I just want Windows. No.
Yeah. So you can't run a Windows image in. Yeah. Basically, you can't run a Windows image in Mac.
That's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
Not even if you put the
Yeah.
That doesn't support it.
Yeah. What I would love is for Mac to support Dockers. That would be awesome. Like to actually have a Mac OS running, something like Windows Nano, because that's what's actually running when you run a Windows image, probably. Something like that. It can just be a headless, sort of thing. But if it has some of the, OS X, APIs and stuff, so that it,
Then you wouldn't need a device to compile.
exactly. That is my whole. That's my whole. The reason why it's on my wish list is.
The whole secondary market will laugh.
I know. Yeah. I was saying, back in the day, I had a Hackintosh, and it was like good, but about every 4 hours, when you were typing, a key would get stuck, and it would just just fill up whatever document you were in, or hopefully you were in a shell or something, and it wasn't doing any harm. But one time I was typing, and delete was the key that got stuck in my source code. I was like, shut down, shut down, shut down. Anyway. Yeah, flaky is the word. All right, so that was the dev perspective and the ops perspective and the dev perspective. And that kind of concludes part 1. Any questions, other questions about part 1? All right. And so then in part 2, he starts going into a little bit more detail about what's actually going on underneath the covers. I'm not sure. I couldn't find the relevance yet. Maybe it'll hit me later on, when he has some more of these topics in the back, which I haven't read yet. But I couldn't.
Docker file, I knew Docker somewhat from the past, but the one that in the Docker file that struck me odd, I went copy dot to dot. I said, "The heck's that doing?"
Oh,
first glance,
in the dev perspective one, yeah, copy dot to dot, yeah, exactly. That copy command is weird because it doesn't specify. There's no local and remote, right? It assumes this one's local and that one's in the container, right? Yeah. They maybe could have done it a little bit nicer there, where you had an argument, copy dash local this dash remote that, or something like that. So after he goes over, how it's actually working underneath the covers in the Docker engine, then he starts talking about building images. And this I did find interesting. So I liked that abstraction, the build time versus runtime abstraction. And then I liked the discussion on the official and unofficial repositories. And I thought it was a little weird, the URL convention of underscore, meaning official repository versus not. And then the images with multiple tags and the.
Does he ever cover the manifest anyway?
No, he mentions it, right? I don't know if he's covering it later. If only we had an index.
No, you don't have an index. Every chapter says the TLDR.
Yeah. I don't know if he covers it later on.
100, right, with the multi-architecture.
Yeah.
He basically, he just says you can run for multiple architecture. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
it doesn't describe what the manifest is or whatever. I'm not sure if he does later on.
No.
You've read the.
No, searching for it. So there's no manifest after page 105.
Okay, that is a definitive no. Yeah. Kindle electronic version. That is a that is a big advantage.
It does show. Search walked up, so it does show up later on.
Which chapter? Or page or something?
370. I'm just showing you the hits.
Okay, so enterprise grade features.
I don't think so. It showed up like three times, 179, 384, and once more. Don't really talk about it.
Yeah. So apparently that's beyond the scope of this book. Manifest files. I mean, I can see it being useful. You know, if you do have people running on 2 different platforms and you're trying to produce images for both.
Docker Compose, right? And I tried to run it with using Windows containers. And it doesn't run. The error it gives me is there's no valid manifest for Windows. Oh, I wonder where that would be. And where to find
Oh, no, yeah, I see. That makes sense. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, for next time, let me make a note for Docker for Windows using Compose. I'll try and research the right way to do that. And if you post that actually on the meetup group, I'll try and reply as soon as I get to it. Okay.
Do me a favor on the container you ran for
Yeah.
Hello Prosiders.
Yeah.
So in the Docker file, we had it expose 8080.
Yep.
But then when we ran it, we did the -p and mapped the host's 8080 to this 80.
Yeah.
But if you change this to something else like 999, and then ran Docker, the same Docker run command
with 8080:999.
just the way it is.
No.
8080. It wouldn't work.
No.
Can you try it?
You cannot connect.
Why would it work?
You'll just connect 8082.
Oh yeah. It won't give you an error, but I'm saying it won't work. We won't be able to get to the website.
So okay, because the expose actually makes it.
Well, I imagine he's doing a node of app.js, right? Depends on how he wrote this. Yeah, see, he's doing app listen 8080 right here. So he's hard coded it in actually 2 places.
And so the expose, you have to match the expose to the -p. That's what I'm curious about.
No, there's no.
That's what I'm saying.
It doesn't.
So if you can you just change that? To
Yeah.
999.
Okay, so the app listen is listening on 8080. Okay, and we go into. Hold on one second. I think I'm still running, right? So I need to container. I should have quizzed you. God dang it! Container. Stop. And with our what was the? No, that was the. Hold on. Yeah, Docker container ls ports names. Yeah, I guess it is TIG web 1. Okay, so if I Docker container stop TIG web 1.
Are you able to run Docker stop instead of Docker container stop? Run Docker stop.
I don't know. Is there a? Well, I'm already stopped now. Ask me again in just a second. Okay, so actually, I need to remove it as well because I'll have to do the whole thing again. Yeah. So.
Okay, well, I didn't want to say. Sorry, I thought it
That's
would be
fine.
easier than that. We don't have to.
That's fine. It's not hard. I need this to be shorter though. Okay, let's see if I can get it such that it. No, I can't get it. Okay, doesn't matter. So we have first I want to edit that Docker file, and I want to change this 8080 to 1234. Okay, and that shouldn't. I don't know. Should that matter? Okay.
I think it will still work actually.
I think so too.
Makes it publicly available, so you can directly connect to the containers IP on that. That's what expose means.
You should be able to have a whole bunch of containers, say, with running something on 4080, and then map a whole bunch of the host's ports to those different containers. So you can have 81, 82, 83, 84.
But what does expose actually do?
Publicly available on the IP.
I think it's a firewall. Your
Firewall.
Not available unless you've exposed it.
Okay, so your theory is this will not work.
My theory is it will work.
And your theory is it will work. Oh, well, okay. Now we got some. Do I want to bet? Okay, and so you're saying.
Well, don't you have to rebuild it?
Oh, sorry. Yes. Thank you. Container build -t and dot.
Oh no, we need a name, right?
Oh, dash name TIG web 2 and dot. Is that good?
The dash T and the name. Yeah, you know dash name.
Oh, okay. Dash T. Yep.
Yeah.
Change that. Okay. So this is
the app is listening on 8080.
uh-huh.
The Docker file has
Exposed 9999. Yep.
And what are you going to map it to?
Well,
Same
we'll
thing we had.
yeah, we'll
You're still going to map it to
Yeah.
8080.
All right. It's not going to work.
So we've got this is great. We're getting like camp. Oh, whoops. That wasn't right. What did I do?
Build, right? Docker
Yeah.
build.
Oh, that's the problem.
Only like well-known ports, 80 and 80, 80.
I can't see. Ooh, that's new.
Critical vulnerabilities.
Okay. Yeah. Well, there's the 999. Okay.
Not unusual.
Expose.
999. Okay. So now if you do the run, like you did before,
The
but
same port
this
map.
time you gave it a different tag, right?
Yep.
Okay. So that, but TIG web 2.
And now you're saying just same.
What was the name?
Hold on, so you're running the wrong image.
Yeah.
And it won't be latest, because
Oh, right.
Oh, yeah.
Like that. Okay.
Hold on. So Docker container ls. I'm sorry. Thank you. Image ls. TIG web 2, 55 seconds ago.
It defaults
It is
to
latest.
latest. If you don't tag it, it'll default to latest.
So
Again, and
And
just
colon.
latest at the end.
TIG web 2 : latest. Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Now,
Now refresh. Still there. Worked.
You overrode it on the command line, but what was in the Docker file got overwritten by what was on the command line. Did it publish on the command line?
What the hell's the exposed?
Yeah,
file?
that's what I'm
The
trying to
reason,
figure
well,
out.
like, in case you don't, so you don't have to type in the command.
The reason that I thought it would work is because we use Docker with Google Cloud, and you actually don't use expose. So I had to look up why am I not exposing ports, and it said it will publicly expose it on the container if you use expose. But the mapping you make internally, the Docker engine to the container, that's the mapping. So the web server still runs on 8080, but now you can connect it to the IP of the container, if you can look it up, on 9999, but there's nothing there.
I see.
So the expose is making it publicly available, so you don't have to go via.
So that's your
local
default
mapping.
port that's exposed via the IP, is what you're saying.
Yeah,
Expose
After Linux, that
is
doesn't look
the default
look up that
port.
IP,
how would you look at that?
something like what you described?
Oh yeah,
Docker,
I looked this up, and
Docker.
it seems to be that people are saying that expose is kind of like an interface that it documents for the people who, because it functions as a type of documentation between the person who builds the image and runs the container about which reports are intended to be published.
So maybe it's just metadata and it means nothing.
But you're saying that if we found out the IP of that Docker container
Oops.
and we without any port mapping on it, if you just hit that IP, it would
have worked if you have the port. And otherwise not.
Okay. So you can do Docker inspect.
Inspect.
With container.
Docker inspect and then the container. Okay. That was just TIGWeb 2.
IP address.
This is interesting. Yeah, 8080 and then 999 is null.
So it's not mapped right now. But it is exposed.
I see.
Interesting. This one? No, this one?
I mean, there's nothing running behind 999.
Yeah.
I see. Okay.
So it's still, but it should fail. It should fail.
Right.
So if you had that expose 8080 Docker file, and then you hit this IP
without anything,
or without anything, you'd be seeing the Pluralsight site. It's auto.
Okay.
Interesting.
Okay, I get it.
I get it, dude.
Yeah, that's good. That's good info. I like questions like that.
Yeah.
We all learn. Okay. Where were we? I have no idea. Help me out. Were we on
Part 2.
Images with multiple tags or something? I don't know. But he talked about image layers and how they can be overwritten at a higher layer and basically hidden. The space is not taken up, which is nice. Let's see what else. And then, of course, he goes into excruciating detail on manifests. Not. And let's see.
He indirectly shows what a manifest does.
Yeah. In the Golang example. Right. Yeah, exactly. But he doesn't really describe what's happening. Yeah. I don't know. Any other questions about images? I found it was, I mean, like I like this chapter. I especially like the part about the hiding of the images later on, and the fact that it doesn't expose, like it doesn't take up more space because you hit it later on, right? I thought that was smart of the Docker.
It's interesting what they're doing. Building image, actually spinning up a container and a cache, and it's executing part of it. It's taking the results out of the cache. You're putting it into the next part that's building in another cache container.
Yeah.
And so it's throwing away the previous one and then spinning it up in a new container, and it gets an intermediate result in the new cache container. That one gets pushed forward into yet another cache, so you get to your final one, and all the intermediate caches, container caches, are thrown away along with it.
Yeah, yeah.
That was. I had to read that through quite a couple of times to really decide what you got out of that.
No, I didn't know.
Well, it isn't obvious that when I read through it that it was actually running a container in a cache as it was building the image. So it's an interesting concept because you are running a container. It's just a cached intermediate container to build an intermediate result. And then the next step takes the intermediate result out of that container and picks up from there.
Cool.
And the first way, the old way they used to do it. See, you remember him saying how awful that used to be, the original way they did it. At the beginning of the chapter, he talks about in the past they used to do it through scripting magic and stuff like that. And I started reading through that. It was like, this newer way of doing it is
much more sane.
Yes.
Cool. All right. Any other things about images we want to talk about or look at? I had forgotten about image inspect, actually. I meant to write that down on the notes, but forgot.
It's cool with the filters too. So you can like target a particular thing with that bracket dot.
Give me, yeah, give me the which page that was on. Sorry, the problem for me was I read all this like a month ago, and so I'm a little having trouble recalling some of it.
I read it a week ago and I had trouble
I was looking at, as an example, at least on my Kindle, it's on page 9. And it was just here where you induct an image LS and then format it and have it like that. If you want to see. But there's another way too when you do the Docker inspect too. I saw that.
Oh, I see. I see what you're talking about. Yeah.
You can do that with Docker inspect. Drill down into a specific thing. Like if you wanted to find the IP that you were just talking about, if you knew first.
I see. So, yeah, he was talking about that, the JSON path or whatever. Yeah. So, Docker inspect, inspect, and then help. Oops. F format string. Right. So we should say -F, and then it would be, we wanted something like port bindings. No, that's not right. Network settings, right? Okay, so it'd be, was it dot? Oh yeah, and I need quotes. Network settings, and then that. Well, that was less than helpful. No, it is right. It's just not formatted correctly. Return JSON for specified type. Yeah, I mean, it's actually right. It's just not formatted well. And that could be a Windows thing. Yeah, like if maybe I ran that same command on Linux, it would look correct. And I actually can see the information that we were looking for right there. Right. Yeah, if I were using PowerShell, there's a lot of stuff that you can do there with the output, you know, format pretty and stuff like that. Yeah, I'm just using the command line. Okay. All right, so moving on from images, the next part was around containers. Let's see if I marked any spots in here. So, yeah, in the middle of the chapter, there is, you know, I think the best picture to show people when you're trying to describe why Docker is cool. You know, the OS virtualization versus the hardware virtualization. But I like it actually when you show, so like this page has 4 VMs running on it. I don't know if you've ever tried to run 4 VMs on the same box, but it's probably not true. And this one only has 4 containers running on it. But Brad, when we were experimenting before the Linux track, he had like 100 and something running on a box. So, you know, I would like to see this be the same size as this, but just filled with containers, right? Like, you know, just show, yes, you can run a lot on a box without taxing your hardware, you know, as much as even 3 VMs. Yes.
Can you run 2 different types of operating system? No, okay. You can't have one, you can run in Windows and the other, right?
I think that will eventually be possible,
yeah.
But it's not possible right now. Eric? I'm sorry, say that again? Yeah, 7.2 and 7.3. Yeah, those 2 pictures side by side really show the benefit of using containers. I just wish he had done a better job of showing how light they are and how many more you can run due to the fact that they're lighter. Eric, you had a question?
So, quick question. Comment. I'm working on a Python project, and at first I started with async.io. I was thinking to instead use Docker, and well, it's one way of dealing with not dealing with the blocking issue. You build up Python that make regular, not async.io apps, just shove them in a bunch of containers. It's a good way of doing it, but.
Yeah, so what you're trying to do when you do async is you are, when there's a blocking IO operation, you're trying to let that thread, yeah, exactly, go off and do something else. And then when the IO operation completes, grab another thread and complete the operation, you know, whatever.
So basically some commands like web scraping, if you're getting a URL from somewhere, or accessing the database for the async.io version of it.
Right.
And so in theory, you can schedule multiple kind of threads.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I meant thread sort of more philosophically rather than, you know, operating system thread.
But when you get a crash, you can bring everything down first of all. And then second is that good luck to know exactly in which kind of logic you were. So if you go back to a regular coding, not the async, the regular old way of doing it, if you have one of those calls which actually go to the web and fetch something, or make a call to your database, well, that's in a container, you can wait. The other ones will have the time to do it. I think that might be an easy way to create async kind of.
Well, so if you think about it, threads are just, it was like, the reason why they were created were lightweight processes. And in the Unix world, we used to do fork and join, right? And so threads were just a smaller version of fork and join. And Docker is, Docker containers are like another version of fork and join, right? But they're going back more to the old process-based fork and join rather than the lighter weight within a process, you know, fork and join. So it would be a little bit heavier than the thread way.
Right.
But
on the other way, development.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. Yeah. Let's see. So then he talks about, you know, kind of the same stuff, the container lifecycle, just like we had done here in the demo. But then he started talking about self-healing containers with restart policies, which we sometimes need if we're doing, you know, processes like this Node app where the Node app might crash and you want the container to always, that Node app to always be running, always be responding to requests. So if it does crash, then go ahead and start a new version of it. Similar to like forever for the Linux people, or in Windows, if you're running a service, you have a restart policy, right? So it's very similar to those sort of things. Yeah.
I was wondering, do a fast CGI app in Windows environment, can you have all of those fast CGI apps being container?
Yes. So in Windows, you're going to use the Nano server, right? And there is now a IIS that you can run within the Nano server, a lightweight. It's called the Core, the hosted web core or something like that. No, sorry, not .NET Core. This is like IIS Core, hosted web core. IIS hosted web core, I think is what it's called. Don't quote me on that. And then IIS hosted web core does support, I think, the fast CGI module to plug into it. Yes. Yeah. So you can, I think, do that. I haven't tried it personally, but it is my understanding that that would work.
This last time I did a Docker, it changed quite a bit, it seems.
Yeah. Yeah, it has quite a bit. Yeah. I mean, it's a really fast moving, as evidenced by a lot of the stuff in the second part of the book. Some of it is, being replaced or is not as commonly used anymore. This stuff, all the basic stuff, this is great. And, we'll continue. It's more standardized. But as we get to the end of this book, there's some stuff that has changed. And this is, February of 2018. So it is definitely a fast moving area. And then there was the orchestration wars, right? Docker Swarm versus Kubernetes versus what's the Fleet and all of them. Helm is in there somewhere. I don't know what the heck that is. I'm hoping to learn. But anyway, so it's definitely evolving. So, any other in terms of containers? I felt like most of it was kind of an overview of stuff we had already done, or a recap, I guess, of things we had already done. With the possible exception of inspect. Nothing? All right. Cool. Well, last chapter then is around containerizing an application. I'm not sure of that verb, containerizing. He says Dockerizing, but I don't know. That also sounds weird. And basically, for the most part, this is just our authoring the Docker file, right? And that actually, if you are doing in Windows, I hadn't really planned on demoing this, but let's try it real quick. In the modern IDEs, like Eclipse or the JetBrains stuff, or Visual Studio, or things like that. They all nowadays allow you to create they'll create for you a Docker file. So getting back to the sort of the Windows side of it rather than the Linux side, if I create a ASP.NET Core web application, and so if I create a web application, there's a button here to enable Docker support for either Windows or Linux, right? And let's choose Windows because we've been talking about Linux for the Actually, I don't know. It might. I haven't done it in a while. Let's see what it. No, it doesn't. Wah wah. Let's see what it has here. So this. Oh. Okay, that's interesting that it was even able to detect this, but it's saying your Docker server host is configured for Linux. However, you just told me you wanted to do this for Windows. Would you like to switch over to Windows now? Let's give it a shot. Oh, whoops. Oh, let's see. Oh, interesting. Yeah, I don't even know what an lcow is. Windows, yeah. But
goes to maybe Linux containers on Windows.
Yeah. So let's see.
So it didn't do it.
No, I don't think it did it.
But it might.
Yeah. So let's see. So this uses Docker Compose, it looks like. Yeah. And it's pulling right now Microsoft ASP.NET Core Nano Server 1709. Yeah, it's pulling. Yeah, there is now a Docker file. So yeah, there's your expose. Oh, and it's using the multi-layer stuff that he talks about, the frums. So there's his base, and then as build, as publish, and as final. Yeah. So anyway, that's what I was saying is these days as a developer, I mean, a lot of this stuff is even automated for you now. You know, you just create a new project in it. No, this is either or, exactly. It's not creating a manifest. Yeah, exactly. It's not creating a manifest for both. It's letting you choose either or. Yeah. Okay. I don't know what else I wanted to say there.
It makes it easy to create it.
Yeah, that's true. And in fact, I wonder if you create it one way, then create it the other way, and then look up manifest, and it probably just references the two Docker files. It'd probably be fairly easy to put something together, but I don't know. I'd have to research it. Okay.
That's pretty good. That compose file that it created. You've got a database layer, and you've got a network. Compose files.
This is actually quite a simple compose file, really. It doesn't do much. Yeah. I think it's really used for, like, if you wanted to run a web farm of, if you wanted to run this in a web farm, basically.
Maybe or like a big player, it would probably
yeah.
target.
Yeah, I agree. There isn't one right now. Yeah.
Depends on what type of project that is.
Right, exactly. Exactly. I mean, I think it's just giving you the building block. Like, you've only created one project at this point, so this is the only one in the compose. But at least it's given you that project as a starting point, and then you could put the other projects that this project is talking to you could list those there and then, yeah, run them all together, which would be nice. Which we'll get to next time. This is a good preview for the next meeting.
Well, it'd be nice next time. I don't have this. I don't have a window set up. What might be nice is you pull up an MVC template project and put
like
it
this
there
one.
and see what this composed file looks like. Bring up an MVC, a .NET MVC.
That's what I have here. That's what I did. I thought I did anyway. Let's see. Well, not in the default MVC, right? Because it's just going to have some static pages, right? You are sort of responsible for building up your database layer, and it's generally via the connection string that you determine how to talk to the database, right? So that part would still be kind of up to you. I mean, like, yeah, I mean, this is the default template, the MVC template. That was the project type that I selected. I said ASP.NET Web Core, and then I said MVC, and I checked that Docker box. So that's really the only change, only customizations I made.
Did it used to include entity?
Well, in terms of the references, not since it went core. I don't think it's done that. It's sort of relied on you to add that in. Yeah, exactly. Okay. So I think the interesting part of this was Docker image history. That was pretty cool. And then that multi-stage builds, which I really feel like he could have done a better job explaining, provided some more depth there. This is one of the areas I felt like he kind of glossed over. He is a teacher, and when you're trying to teach something in a short amount of time, it's okay to gloss something over, but when you've got a book, that's the time that you can really, elaborate. And I think he kind of failed to do that.
Not to beat the horse to death, but what's going on there is, say you have 3 targets. First target might pull down a Linux, like an Alpine. I put an app in there. You might need build tools to build the app. You don't want to carry those build tools around when you combine them big, so it goes into the first target layer, and it does run it as if it forms those building steps, compiler steps, and all those tools. So it ends up forming that intermediate image. You don't need all of those build tools.
Right. You just need the output.
Image forward into
right. You just need the output of the build.
And it's not true. It totally throws away that. It stores that out on post.
Right.
In case you use the identical thing. Smart.
Yep, it is. And you can see here, let's see. So he has as build, and here we're doing the .NET restore, which is going to pull all the NuGet packages and so forth that are needed in order to build this application, but only the ones that are actually referenced in the release build are going to end up in this output directory, and that's what is being copied over into the publish, and then that's what's copied over into the final build as well. Yeah. But I feel like, so he switched. All along we've been talking about, Alpine and Node and stuff like that, and then in the Docker file here in the multi-stage builds, he's doing this Java app, and he's got Maven and stuff like that. And I feel like continuity, he could have like kept building on that Alpine. I think it might have made it a little bit clearer to understand before he went in. Now let's look at a different example. I just think he could have done it a little better. But I did actually do that, and I have the output. And it was kind of interesting to pick through. So here's his @C sample shop app that he mentions on that page 149. And as you build, you can see this first one is the storefront, and it's pulling some stuff down. And then he does a workdir, a copy, an npm install. There's that same warning we were getting before. And that added 973 packages. Yeah, exactly. And then let's see, he does the run. And there's what you're talking about. I think the removing of the intermediate container. And then we get another from, which is the app server. And this one's using Maven, right? And it's pulling a bunch of stuff there, and it's building. And not yet. Yeah, not yet. Yeah, we'll get there. Yeah, exactly. So workdir copies running Maven on the POM. That's all the projects and so forth that are referenced. And then finally, I mean, this is a lot of work. Jesus, I don't even remember it being this much work. Yeah, but I don't think it goes all the way. Okay, I've gone too far. Okay, so blah, 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 blah. Okay, there. So finally, 13 seconds later and countless gigs downloaded, we have success. And now, once again, removing the intermediate. And then we have another from. And now we're starting with Alpine, which is like stripped down image. And we're copying from storefront and from app server the output into that final thing. Yeah.
So is that just what you were referring to, removing the intermediate?
Yeah.
It's building up intermediate images, but in order to build that, you can see all the work that was. It actually has to create a container and the result of that container running the first target is it produces an intermediate image, and it does store that intermediate image actually on the host in case you ever want to do that same
step again. Yeah.
Target again.
Yeah.
But then when you go to the next target, that should go and pulls in the previous target.
Actually, yeah, we could do this again, right?
Yeah, if you're building it,
you're going to use exactly that same stuff. And it was like, boom, 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 done. Right? So that's, I mean, compare the output of this versus this. It's
Windows Docker.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
But it was fast.
Yeah, it was too fast, right? Okay, so now am I back over on? Okay, sorry, I didn't see that. Okay, but still very, very fast, right? So it didn't have to pull anything. All of those intermediate images were there already. It produced it in under a second, whereas the first one took 5 seconds and 13 seconds respectively for the first two images, right? Yeah.
You can see those
Yeah.
And I'm not even sure if they're well labeled.
No, yeah, there's those nuns. Oh, no. Sorry. You meant image? Yeah. These guys. Yeah. Yeah. So it doesn't even name them or tag them in any way. the only way really of referring to them is those image IDs. And we may be able to see, I don't know, maybe not. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
Also talks about ordering. The first time it comes across something that isn't right.
Right.
Nothing's right.
Right. Yeah. That's how he kind of wraps up the chapter, right? Is best practices and talking about the build cache and the ordering and making sure that you're doing your special customizations that are going to be different every time at the end of the build rather than at the beginning of the build process. Yeah, exactly. So it doesn't, yeah. And then he talks about squashing, which I feel like this was covered at TIG, but it may have been ArchSig. We had the great debate on, it was Git. We were having a Git debate of, yeah, squashing. Is squashing good or is squashing bad, right? Like, and it's the same exact debate here. You know, it's like good in some cases, but it's bad in other cases, right? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And in the Git situation, right, you're taking all these small little commits and you're saying, this is one, you know, feature. And so you can't see, you know, if you're going back in history on this trunk, right, you can't see those small intermediate things. They're gone, right? They've been squashed. Sometimes you need to see those, and sometimes they're very important, and sometimes they're extraneous noise, and they shouldn't be on the trunk. So there's the trade-off.
Save space or simpler.
Yeah, I mean, you're certainly saving in terms of your history. You're saving.
You don't see a million little.
Yeah, exactly. It gets easier to comb through.
Yeah. One overall impression I got reading. I really appreciate it. It is pretty.
Yeah.
Impressive.
Oh, yeah. Docker is amazing. Yeah. And people ask, you know, I get questions all the time when we're doing cloud-based projects of, well, should I be using, you know, Azure or should I be using AWS? And what if I want to switch? That's the question I get. What if I want to switch? And I say, well, you know, you have to write your code such that it has some abstractions of whether you're talking to S3 or you're talking to Azure Storage, or, you know, whether you're talking to SQS or you're talking to Azure Queues or whatever, right? You've got to have some abstractions for dealing with those cloud-specific technologies. But for the most part, if you have a container, right, whether you're running it locally or in the cloud, and whether that cloud is Azure or AWS or Google or who cares, right? It's a container. It's running the container, and it doesn't matter, right? It's all. So it's a way of achieving cloud agnostic. I don't know. I don't even know how to say that. Yeah. 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 I mean, it's. I think they're really just trying to, you know, get market share because they recognize that a good number of developers are using Docker and only Docker, and so they just want to get those things running on their cloud. Yeah. Cool. Any other questions and/or comments?
I was intrigued by we wrote about the latest hack. Just the hack.
Yeah.
And you, at the beginning, you have an issue, something that happened to you.
Yeah. Exactly.
I wonder if there's best practice.
Well, he even
use the latest stack in your Docker file, yes or no? Do you target a specific? I mean, I can imagine today something works, tomorrow it breaks.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, like
you're downloading a different image without you even
we have the same problem when you're dealing with packages in NPM, right? And you you know, shrink wrap. What's not shrink? It's not shrink wrap anymore. It's package lock. Thank you. So you have this package lock, and I'm wondering, you know, are they working on something which is similar for Docker, or do they expect us to to basically write some script ourselves to basically say, okay, this is production now. I want to, if my developer pulls it tomorrow, they should get, if they're pulling production, they should only get these specific images, not latest,
Yeah,
right?
the ops build images themselves based on
Look at requirements context.
Yeah.
In Python, where you use your, I haven't used Python a lot, but I know there's a requirements doc that specifies what packages, versions of those packages.
Yeah. It depends on, in Python, it depends on which package management system you're using. But yeah, there's always some way of freezing the package versions.
I find it most interesting because everything else you do is longer than great old, mostly you target a specific version of it.
Yeah.
And then here suddenly you're using the latest.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's best said that's about best practice yet. Did you actually say that?
No, he didn't say it was a best practice. He just said this is be careful. This is the way it works, right? Yeah.
How do people deal with it?
Yeah, I don't.
Really break things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea here around the build is it is a developer workflow, and you want to get the latest, right? To test it out. But I agree, when you get over onto the more production side of things, you definitely want to lock it down. And he did mention having a dockerfile.dev and a dockerfile.prod or something. I can't remember exactly what his extension was, but having two different versions of those files, maybe one that locks down a specific tag, and one that just uses latest, that would be kind of the equivalent of the package lock in NPM or the, requirements or the package JSON in NuGet or the whatever it is, in whatever language platform you're using, right? Yeah.
With this multi-stage build, I started to get confused as to whether the image is an environment or an artifact, and whether build artifact is what I should be saving as my production artifact, or if just the image itself is what I deploy and I don't need the other artifact.
Well, that gets kind of to the squash trade-off, but I think from a developer's perspective, right, your Docker file is your steps, and the only thing that you need to save is the output of the final thing that you care about, right? That's how I feel about it. And you should just publish the output of the final thing that you care about to someplace safe, just so it's backed up. I personally don't think you need to publish the intermediate formats or anything like that, because they'll be cached locally on all of your different developers' machines. They're constructible from a set of instructions. As long as we've got the Docker files saved, you're good to go. So that's the way I feel about it, but other people may have different opinions there. But
so the image, the resulting image is as opposed to built inside of the image.
Yes, I think so.
That's what you'll publish, and that's what your production servers will pull down to run.
Yeah.
And are we going to dive into CI at all?
I don't think so. Yeah, he doesn't. Was there?
I'll just say I've used Docker Cloud for CI, and it's the worst thing ever. But Circle CI I use now. It's very good.
Circle CI. What do you guys use?
Well, I use CodeShip, which is really good and has great Docker support. And then we won't talk about that.
We have a lot of fragile tooling. We built ourselves.
So you have no other recommendations other than CodeShip, is what you're saying?
Code ship's really good. Bless you.
Yeah. Does he get into it? I don't think he does. So Docker stacks is kind of CI-ish, I think. Yeah. And you know what? I think this guy, Poulton, has a class or something on Docker DevOps. Nigel, sorry. Nigel Poulton. Yeah. Yeah, so he has a little, I don't know, related course, I guess, on CI and CD using Docker. So I haven't watched it myself, but I don't know if anybody has. No. But I remember seeing it when I was looking at the book, and guess what? Circle CI. Yeah, so maybe an option. And you know, if we want, we can try and talk about some of that stuff next month. I'll try and make it a point of watching this piece to see if it's any good. I'll post a little thing on the meetup. Okay, I think that's it. Any other questions?
I had one final
thought.
comment, looping back to the exposed thing.
Can't let it lie.
Well, no. But I discovered if you do -P, then it will look into the Docker file to see what port's exposed and map that to a dynamically chosen port host.
So say that again.
So given that Docker file, if you did a -P, it would spin up a container
with no numbers after.
Just -P.
Yeah.
It would spin up a container that maps some 36852 or whatever it comes up with to whatever we said 9999. And I think the idea there is you could spin up multiple containers from that image using -P, and it'll just keep dynamically assigning it ports. If you had said explicitly -p 80 to 80, then you've only got that one option.
Got it.
P will just keep coming up with new ones based on the exposed.
How do you find the ports of these?
It'll show up in your, so I mean, it would show up in your Docker container LS. It shows you the container and how it's mapped from host to.
Cool. So that's how you do your web farm type situation, right? Because you'd need multiple ports for each container instance that you're running. Yeah. Cool.
That you expose has to be whatever.
Yeah. Then they do have to match. Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Good to know. Thanks. All right. So for next time, so the meetup says read through the end of the book, and you can if you want to. But I will say that we are really only going to go through security, which is 328. So the tools for the enterprise, we're not really going to talk about next time. I mean, it's not super heavy reading. So if you want to just keep reading, that's fine. But just saying, if you're struggling and you just want to get the bare, minimum reading done, it stops on page 328, and the last chapter is security.
But you're going to add some other things.
I will post what I just said on the meetup, and I will try to. There were 2 questions that were asked, and I want to look at this CI/CD thing to see if it's worthwhile. Yeah, but give me a couple of days. we're kind of busy right now. We have multiple deadlines going at once. Always fun. Yeah, so it'll probably be next week. Cool.
Good. Thanks.
Thanks. Yeah. And I think Ike will be back next month as well. So.
Oh, it's a rooftop. That's awesome.
Yeah, you've done that, right?
Yeah.
What gym is that?
Broadway Athletic Club.
Yeah. You guys validate parking?
We don't. So sorry, on the meetup,
Yeah.
we do. There is a post in there that talks about street parking and other places to park that are not the internal. We have, unfortunately for us, it costs us about the same amount that you would pay. So.
Do you work at Crafting Bites?
Yeah, it's myself and my business partner Ike and Shashank. Yeah, as one of our employees, and then a couple other guys that aren't here tonight. But,
Yeah.
Shashank Scott.
Yeah, to see you.
Nice to meet you guys. We can see you too.
Okay, so we need to disengage all this stuff. Let me stop the meetup. The YouTube. Live events. Hold on. Let me here. Stop broadcast.